Hello, everyone. Welcome to our weekly Q&A with Mark. This is a very simple format that we run. Everyone gets to log in, pick Mark's brain. If you've got a question, you go ahead and start loading up the Q&A box right now. The other thing that I've started asking for at these is just a little bit more context on your business. So a lot of the times we're asking very granular, specific, targeted questions about our business and our business situation, and Mark can't read your brain or travel through the internet to see your business and location and shop and size and team. So as much of that information as you can provide in the actual question just helps him tailor an answer that's a bit more custom for you. So that's my one ask. Hello, everyone in the chat. I think, Mark, you're good on your end. Can we start?
All set.
Okay. Wow. Great one to start. Thanks, Tiffany. This is from Tiffany. How do you communicate to your employees that they are valued but replaceable? We're a smaller company and are still trying to get our systems in place, and we are dealing with a very difficult employee. He is a hard worker but has a lot of attitude. We're giving him production-based bonuses as well as a very good hourly wage for our area. Even with that, he is acting very entitled and seems to think he has more say in things than he actually does. How do we explain to him that it is our company and he is replaceable without losing him? Again, he's a hard worker and we don't want to have to train someone new and deal with lost revenue because we are so small. So that's a great question about a high performer who's maybe got a bad attitude. What are your thoughts, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. I think high performers naturally kind of develop a little bit of that importance or self-importance that you're describing. It's just natural. And I think we all find ourselves in that position at one time or another. I know I certainly have, when I was younger, really kind of overestimated my value to the business that I owned, or even my value as it related to every aspect of the business. And so I think it's just a human thing. We all naturally think that we add so much value that we're not replaceable, when in fact, every human is replaceable. I think God made us that way. At the end of the day, we're only here for a short time. And we're here to share what we know with other people and help them in their journey, and in turn, learn by teaching. And I think if you try to unlock that in that person, rather than trying to convince them that they're not the most important, or rather than letting them know that they are actually replaceable, and coming right out and saying that, I think rather than take that approach, I would really start to strongly lever them as a leader and as a teacher. And so you probably need to consider having a little bit of an organizational reset. When these things are happening in your business, it is always a reflection of you as a leader. And maybe you haven't invested in leadership training for your staff yet. I'd strongly suggest the book Good to Great as a starting point for everybody to read and understand what level 5 leadership is. And this person that you're describing may really, I would say gravitate is maybe a word, toward being a level 5 leader. It sounds like they place a high value on themselves, which usually people who know that they have a lot to share and offer get frustrated when they don't have a way of actually teaching other people what they know, or being acknowledged for what they've gathered over their career and the value that they offer to the business. And I think as soon as you start to position them as a leader, as a teacher, as a mentor, they take on a different role. Rather than their ego sort of shining through with the self-promotion and that self-importance that you're describing, it somehow like transfers into teaching. And so I would really strongly recommend that you put Good to Great in front of them. How to Win Friends and Influence People should be a must read in every company for all employees, so that you have some common language. And then what I'd really strongly recommend is the Dale Carnegie leadership training programs. Those are available online. They have in-person training almost everywhere, coast to coast in North America. I would highly, highly recommend that you put an individual like this through training like that. They will become more self-aware, and I think you'll see a lot of what you're describing subside. But again, you also have to do a little bit of work as a leader and make that possible, not just by offering the training, but also maybe changing your language a little bit and rather than feel as though you have to tell somebody when they have this problem, kind of shift your perspective a little bit and start to think about like, how can I show them a different way rather than telling them that they have a problem? And I don't know you well enough to know or know you at all, sorry, to be able to actually coach you. But what I see most common is leaders that just aren't really setting the stage for people to maybe let their egos subside a bit. And what I mean by this is you being a little bit more vulnerable and just simply saying, hey, I know it's not perfect around here, but I want to work on it. I want to put you in a position where you can mentor more. I want to invest in training. I want to take a little bit more feedback, and I really want to put your skills to use in a better way. That would be my suggestion. I know that was fairly long-winded. Hopefully that helps.
In the same vein, but more about managing a team, it's a question from Caleb Auman. We seem to be building an entire team of red personalities. And by the way, let me just add this for the folks that don't know what a red personality is. This comes from this book. It's called Surrounded by Idiots. It's a good read. And a red personality would be like a high D on a disc profile. So that's usually someone that's a little bit more dominant, a little more A type, a little bit more decisive, very entrepreneurial. So just context for the rest of the audience. Caleb's asking, we're building an entire team of red personalities. How do we manage this? Have you ever had to deal with that, Mark? Like a whole bunch of very bold, decisive A type people. How do you get them working together?
I would say I deal with that on a daily basis, particularly right now, starting up LeanScaper. I think we have a whole team of high actioned red people, definitely varying degrees, but totally understand the question. And I think I've lived through this for years. In trade businesses, I'll say this is kind of common actually, because I think the type of people that gravitate and toward trades and really thrive in the leadership roles tend to be former athletes. They tend to be people that are really outdoorsy, really aggressive by nature in the way that they kind of go out and just get things done. And so you've got that entrepreneurial kind of attitude, mindset, can do. And yeah, definitely there's times where that, starts to clash. And naturally, when the overarching strategy in your business is not very clear, then everybody kind of puts together their own sort of idea of what it is that you're trying to achieve and how you're trying to achieve it. And so my opinion here is, regardless really of the personality types, if you have a lot that are similar, this will help. When you really come back to the vision and mission and you're super clear on where you're headed, and you create some meaningful goals, 3 to 5 overarching goals for each quarter, or generally for the year, depending on the size of business. And everybody understands what they are doing to support those goals. And we actually make the time to meet each week, each month, each quarter. And we actually just talk about the 5 overarching goals and everything that each of these really powerful personalities are doing specifically to get there. What tends to happen is there's this trust that ends up sort of coming into the equation, and these stronger personalities kind of get out of each other's way, but also tend to enable and help and support each other as much as possible at the same time. So I think it's really important, if you've got a lot of red personalities in the business, to just get super, super clear on vision and goals and success metrics, because these type of people watch the scoreboard and they don't like when somebody else isn't pulling their weight. And I think when you have regular meetings, when you watch the metrics, when they know that everybody else is doing their part, and that the sum of all of its parts, the company's parts, really do add up to this incredible result at the end of the year where that mission and vision and the goals that we set out are actually achieved. And so I really do think to keep those type of people engaged, you just need that transparency, not only at the company level, but at the individual level, where everybody kind of knows what the other's doing and they just kind of stay out of each other's swim lanes, but also really support each other. I don't think it's a bad thing to have a lot of similar people. I just think it requires extra transparency and clarity.
Okay, hope that helps, Caleb. This is kind of an interesting one, a theme that we've hit on a few weeks in a row, but this is a more specific question from Eric about the balance between like overly automated touch and that in-person feel with customers. So he says, "Hey, Mark, we're trying to implement faster automated budgetary estimates for our hardscape projects, about 15K each. But feedback from one projects, meaning deals that they've closed, indicates that clients chose us because we visited in person, unlike competitors sending proposals online. How do you recommend balancing automation efficiency with the personal touch that seems to be our competitive advantage? We're caught between modernizing our process and qualification, which might be more efficient, and maintaining the personal touch, which has the delivered work." It's a great question. Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, I love the question because I really do believe that people now more than ever do business with people that they know, like, and trust. And I think this is, nothing new, but I think more and more as we see more technology enter just about every area of our lives, we do really appreciate kind of knowing who's behind that technology. And we want to put a name with a face. We want to look somebody in the eyes and know that they're going to actually follow through and do what they say and say what they do. And, I think we're all skeptical of cyber crimes and scams and all these different things. So when we get a chance to just connect with people, we tend to make our final decisions there. So having a great digital experience is certainly a great place to start, but just making sure that the process involves an opportunity to get personal when you need to. And maybe that's not too early. I think, this day and age, people do expect a very easy way to book a meeting, which I think meeting booking links are the way to do that. I think that first meeting should be clear in what it is and what it's going to include and what the outcome is. And in that case, what I would strongly suggest is whether it's on your website, the person answering the phone, or you booking a discovery call, be very, very clear that you start every engagement with a 15-minute Zoom call or online meeting. And the intent there is to take a quick look at the property. We're going to pull up an image of the property. We're going to have a quick discussion about what you have in mind. Make sure that what we offer is what you need, and vice versa, that we're a good match. And we'll start to talk about some budgets to give you an idea of what these things cost. If they're looking for a patio in the backyard and it's, as you said, $15,000 project, we're gonna look and say, hey, these projects generally for the size of patio that I think you need, we're gonna be somewhere between $10,000 and $20,000, depending on exactly how big we make it. Once I get to the site, check out all of your access and drainage and all of the technical things that need to be considered. And then, of course, we have to choose a product. And so I think getting to a number quickly saves you the potential wasted time of spending 3 to 4 hours booking a meeting, driving there, going through the meeting, and following up on something that was never really within the budget to begin with. So we want to screen, but we want to do that in a personal way. And so I think that discovery meeting can be handled in a very, very personal way where you are building trust. You are using compelling questions and power statements to build authority and become the trusted advisor. And then moving on to an in-person meeting to solidify the quote, make final product selections, and ideally, print that quote right there in your truck and hand deliver it and explain it while you're there. So I mean, depending on what you're selling and who you're selling it to, these processes really change But I really believe that there's a strong connection to be had between using technology and then still being very personal, having a very, very well rehearsed pitch, compelling questions, power statements, a lot of confidence in handling objections and asking for the close and knowing when to ask for the close. So definitely a hybrid model there.
Would we go so far as to say, Mark, our view on this is in general, it's always good to just have both options. Like the modern landscaper is just gonna have you buy your own way. There's a self-serve option, and then for the people that want that more friendly in person, get to know each other conversation, that's always available too.
Yeah, I really do believe it has to be a
Yeah.
blend and a hybrid, and it has to be flexible. Some people are very much not ever going to log in for a Zoom call. Let's face it, there's still
Yeah.
a lot of boomers out there spending a ton of money that may not be interested in a Zoom call to have a discussion about their house. That's just the way it is. And so I think that flexibility is key.
I'm gonna ask this next question, but I'll just let everyone know when I get it asked and Mark starts answering it. I'm gonna go dig up some links that I can put in the chat for you guys to go and sort of funnel hack a few businesses that I think have done a really, really good job setting up online booking, like self-serve sales processes. So you guys can play around with that. I will drop those in a sec. This is a question from Shane. We discussed yesterday the importance of avoiding discounts. Could you explore some more strategies for addressing this objection? We are not usually the low guy, but price sensitivity is increasing in the current economic climate, and we're encountering this challenge more frequently than before.
Generally speaking, everybody wants to pay a fair price for what they're getting. I think like starting there and just simply acknowledging that we all share that same sentiment. We want to pay a fair price, but we never want to sacrifice anybody else's safety. We definitely don't want to sacrifice quality when we're buying anything, whether it's clothes or cars or houses or landscaping. And generally speaking, we don't want to pay for somebody else's inefficiency or lack of capability. So we want to pay for somebody to show up and do the job with the right skills, right equipment. We want to make sure they get the work done properly. And ultimately, we want to make sure that everybody's safe in the process. And I think, generally speaking, if we align on that and we say that all humans are likely to respond to that, then what we have to do is we have to find a way to ask questions when objections start to come up around price that get them to admit that the other company may not be as technically capable, they may not be as safe, they may not be insured, they may not be as professional, they may not have a professional designer on staff, they might not have a training program, they might not have the right equipment for the job. And so what we have to do is we have to be really capable of explaining that our price is not going to be the cheapest price because we invest really heavily in these things to make sure that our customers get the absolute best experience possible. And you can't possibly deliver the absolute best experience in the least amount of time, like make it happen fast and make it happen cheap, right? I always say you can only kind of pick two of those three. You can do it super fast, super inexpensive or cheap, but your quality is probably not going to be there. And so, what I always try to do when I'm talking with people is ask them questions to get them to understand that. And I think often asking them questions about the other bid and saying, hey, are you sure that the scope of work matches our scope of work? Because there's a lot of things that we're doing here. And we really give you the detailed estimate that we give you so that you understand just how much extra work we do to make sure that this project looks, acts, and functions the way we promised it would for the next 25 years. And that costs a little bit of extra money. So we talk about that. We talk about warranties, talk about training our staff, talk about paying our staff really well so that they have a living wage. And I talk about benefits, and I talk about retirement savings. And I talk about the fact that I actually love my staff. And if I worked at the rates that some of these other companies work at, I'd never be able to pay them a living wage, and they'd never own a house or send their kids to college. And I really have the confidence to talk about this openly with people because I feel it's my duty to provide for the people that I work with each day, my employees, and also provide for the customers that I decide to work for. Um, I want to make sure that I provide the right thing for everybody around me, and there's a price to that. And I think just being incredibly confident about saying it and having questions that kind of break down their confidence or instill some fear in their decision of potentially using the cheaper provider is usually where I go. I never discount. I've never done it. I did it early in my career for a few years, but I haven't discounted anything for a long time for this reason. I just think that we actually have to be better at explaining our value proposition, and we have to kind of hold the line in terms of the fact that we charge a little bit more because we are better. And you have to believe it, and you have to be confident enough to say it to anybody in any moment. And that does take a little bit of practice. I'm a big believer in a lot of pitch training and a lot of sales training for this reason, because I think we want to get challenged on the spot, and we want really hard questions coming at us. And that's why I like role play training with other peers in your company to really challenge each other on this one, because let's be honest, it is the most common objection that we come up against in the industry.
I wonder if it's worth maybe lingering on that point just for an extra second, Mark. It may be obvious to you, but maybe for newer followers or newer LeanScapers, can you unpack the why you never discount piece? Is it like maybe talk about the mindset, the shift in culture it has, and I mean, there's a pure financial component to it as well. Just maybe walk people through why that is such a dumb strategy and you don't do it. What did you learn?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, a brand experience in general is a result of every single touch point and every single decision. And so I like that you pressed me on this one, because when you go to create a brand and when you want to build a brand of excellence, which I'm sure everybody on this call wants a brand of excellence, excellence comes at a cost. And the minute that we start working at the lowest price, or we start taking shortcuts, or we change our level of service for somebody who can't afford to pay for excellence, we degrade our brand. And I want to protect my brand at any cost. And so if somebody is not buying what my brand represents, then I go and find another customer who is. And so the way that I kind of look at this is, I love, Steve Jobs always called it 1,000 no's. And I think saying no a lot more creates a lot more space in your life and in your business for the things that you really want in your life and business. And most people hurry to say yes, and they take what they get. But in my life and in my experience building brands, I've always found that when I'm more selective and when I take my time and when I say no more, I create the space for what I really want to be there. And it might take time for it to show up, but it always shows up. And so really holding the line on behalf of the brand that you're trying to build is really what the sum of it all. At the end of the day, if we start making exceptions to excellence, whether it be what we're charging or what we're doing or how we're training, or not using metrics or guessing on our pricing, or not having the right equipment on the job, or not investing in our people, not letting somebody go when it's time to let them go, all these things in our business end up really taking away from our brand. And then what we're left with is just something that we're not proud of. And it starts with every little decision. And I'll tell you, the one that really means something to me is the price I'm charging, because that's the fuel for the mission that I'm on. And if I'm not charging enough to fuel my mission, then my mission is never going to succeed. And so be authentic to yourself and really take it back to your vision and your mission, and count on yourself to be disciplined enough to do the right thing at every touch point in your business to build the brand that you actually say you want to own.
Love it. Thanks for digging a little deeper on that one. I added something to the chat, everyone. If you struggle with boundaries and you're also learning to say no, there's a book called The Power of No, and I linked it. It's really short. It's really fun. It's quite a cute read, but it was really profound for me. So for any of you yes people, and I think there's probably about 70 of you on the call right now, that would be a great resource to start with. Okay, so this is kind of a granular one. This is one of those ones you'll have to listen carefully to, and if it doesn't make sense, we can parking lot it and ask Robert to come back and add some more detail. But I think I know where he's going with this. Um, he says, Mark, can you discuss your strategy with pricing swimming pool projects as it relates to revenue per hour? For example, swimming pool only projects might be $600 in revenue per hour when working directly in alignment with an LMN budget, but our budgeted revenue per hour is significantly lower. Are you willing to reduce pricing on pools as long as you stay above budgeted revenue per hour? If yes, do you ever reduce to the point where you lose some of your overhead recovery?
Great question. When I talk revenue per hour, always remember that I always monitor gross profit as well. So in LMN, if you look at an estimate analysis, it sounds like you're using LMN. Revenue per hour, net profit, and gross profit are all sitting there. Now, I don't ever discount anything, even if it has extremely high revenue per hour, if it's going to go below my budgeted gross profit and net profit. So I look at the three metrics together. So again, if I had $1,000 per revenue hour with 28% net, then yeah, I'd absolutely be happy to bring that down to 17% or 18% if that's what my budget was for the year. But I always look at the combination of revenue per hour and gross profit. I don't really look at net profit much because there's so much room for change there based on where we're investing in the business and whatnot, but definitely gross and revenue per hour. And you're right, swimming pools are a little higher than typical. There's lots of services that are, though, outdoor kitchens, landscape lighting. A lot of planting projects are really high, 600, $800 an hour. Anything with a lot of equipment, even installing, gravel on a large driveway or parking lot can be over $1,000 an hour. So I tend to really hold the line with the pricing that comes out of LMN and just really stay on track with gross profit as a key metric that I use to make those decisions.
Janine is asking kind of a quick follow-up on that one. Do you track gross profit per hour? Is that a KPI that you think about, or is it just usually revenue per hour?
I like revenue per hour. It's much easier to track, but like in LMN on job costing, every time you look at a job cost, it shows the gross profit on the project and the revenue per hour on the project. So you kind of know instantly what that is when you're looking at revenue per hour. If I operate at a 50% gross profit and I'm doing $200 an hour work, I instantly know. But I strive toward the revenue per hour of the budget for that division or for the company as being the baseline for my work. In other words, if I go out and bid a job mid-season and my budgeted revenue per hour for my hardscape division was $220, I would not take a job that was only $140 per hour. I wouldn't do the job. If they just wanted like the absolute least expensive paver and it was coming up at 140, I would just increase my profit until it came up to the top line number, to that revenue per hour, and I tried to sell it at that price, which quite often we were able to sell it. And if we can't, then we don't want it because we should be installing luxury products or more expensive products or products that we can put in so fast that the revenue per hour comes up. And so it just kind of really using that revenue per hour as the baseline and then monitoring gross profit to make sure it's healthy is kind of the combo that I found work best.
Awesome. Thank you. Question from Felicia. We are a commercial landscape construction and maintenance company. We average about 1 million in maintenance and 1 million in snow removal and specialize in condo boards and senior centers. I recently took over our maintenance operations. Our teams are exactly what we want them to be. Our contractors are super happy, and I would like to grow our maintenance division. As I am fairly new to this, I do not have a ton of sales experience, and I was wondering if you had any advice or tips on how to grow. So I think that's a question about sort of growing a maintenance division, and then there's been a few people that have piled on top and liked that question. So I think there's a couple of people wondering. So thanks for the question, Felicia. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I'll go to the whiteboard and spend a bit of time. That one's a loaded question. Nothing easy about this one, so I'll use the whiteboard and spend a little bit of time here. Let's just think about this for a minute. So commercial, maintenance, and snow. Sound like it was like HOA, condominium type work. Okay, so how do you grow it was the question. I'm all completely on a sales side. I'm going to just kind of itemize a few key things that have to happen. Number one, you need partners to grow that business. You can't grow that business by counting on people finding you, because these people the boards tend to buy all of their services, as you probably well know, through property managers. So we're going to definitely need property managers. And then when you think about it, we're probably going to need to do some marketing, which we'll come back to. We're going to need to do some outbound sales, and we're going to need a sales process that really kind of ensures that that customer, that ideal customer profile that you're aiming for, have a really strong awareness of why you're better than everybody else in that specific market. So this is not the complete list. A strategy for growing would take us, a day. I'm going to just touch on a few things quickly here. I can't say enough about how much we cover this at the Revenue Growth Accelerator. That's a 2.5-day event that we did earlier this year. And then we also did a sales training follow-up for salespeople for another 2 days. So kind of 4.5 days to go through this. So I'm not going to give you like a complete answer. So I just wanted to kind of start with that. This is not a fulsome answer, but it's going to give you some quick wins for sure. The property managers, the way we're going to find those, there's property management trade shows. You can buy lists, so purchased lists of property managers, so that you find out who all of the property managers are in your area. Commercial real estate agents are a great partner here as well, because they kind of have the relationships often with the landowners and the property managers, and they kind of know what's happening, and when there's new buildings turning over and new properties coming to market, they're well aware. So depending on the exact mix, there's a few partnerships there that you can tap into. Then marketing, you're going to want to use a lot of email marketing. Once you get these lists, you're going to try to hammer them with really good content that really engages them to book a meeting. And so we're going to use marketing, and we're going to try to book meetings that way. We're going to want our website to really look, act, and function like that's the type of work we do, so that when our ICP gets to the website, all they see are properties that look like theirs. They hear how we serve those problems, the pain points, our solutions. Everything kind of speaks to that ICP. So we want to really make sure that we look like the trusted advisor for taking care of these types of properties. So that's got to be there. And obviously we want to be able to book meetings direct from the website as well. So we're going to want to make sure that we've got that all figured out. And then ideally, we want to have a team of people that are actually calling and visiting these types of properties. So outbound calling, first phone call, true cold call. We're just trying to get a meeting. We're trying to get an opportunity to meet with them, to discuss their snow plowing, to discuss their year-round maintenance, depending on which time of year it is. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to build a huge funnel of future opportunity. Now, the hard part with this market is often when you're doing outbound calling, you're actually building leads that will not come to fruition for 6 months to 3 years, in some cases even 5 years. So you've got to be cold calling always, which means you need block time in your calendar consistently to be doing this. Now, the bigger operators, like the national providers, they have people that do this full time for a living. All they do is do business development work. All they're doing is outbound calling, emailing, trying to get meetings. They get there to the site, they do a site assessment, then somebody else helps them prepare the pricing, and then they go present it and close it. And so they're just doing this every day of the year, all day long. And so that's what you're competing with when you're in the commercial market. And then the other problem is a lot of times they have much lower overhead, and quite often they'll buy the contracts at a really low rate, counting on getting a lot of enhancements. And so you're up against, some real experts as it relates to outbound selling and closing. And, a lot of what I just talked about was the sales process, but we have to refine this in a way where we can build a huge pipeline. And so what I mean by this is our pipeline is going to end up looking a little different than it would in, residential, where you show up, you quote, and you've got the job or you don't. You don't need as much funnel, and the timing of the funnel is a little bit different. Now, in HOA work, we might have in proposed pipeline, we might have $8 million, and we'll be lucky, and I mean lucky, to go and get 500,000 to come through at the bottom of the stage. We might be negotiating down here, all of these stages take time. And again, from the time you've got a lead to the time you close the business, it could be 3 months, as I said, up to 5 years, because depending on when the contract is up for renewal, depending on what time of the year it is when you're outbounding and you're calling and you're building funnel, and the next cycle for a seasonal shift, whether it be winter, summer, or whether it be an annual renewal or a 3-year, 5-year contract, there's just a lot of time in here. But what you're trying to do is understand what your typical cycle time is. This is really important. What the typical cycle from proposal through to close is, and what that close rate is. If this is only 10%, and this sales cycle is on average 6 months, then that dictates how much proposal pipeline we need to be generating every single month. And it gets very mathematical growing a business like this. Typically, if you're going to have a $2 million new business target, you're going to have to get 10 or 12 million dollars worth of really solid proposals out there to people that are highly likely to purchase in order to actually make that happen in the following year. And what I see most commercial contractors failing to do is not building enough pipeline, particularly smaller companies. You mentioned in around 2 million. It's a difficult phase because you don't often have a really big marketing budget, and you don't have a big sales team budget. So you're out there hunting for bigger fish without really necessarily the time and resources. And you're competing against other people who do have the time and resources. So what I'd suggest is create some block time every week and really put a lot more emphasis on building out that sales process, optimizing the website, optimizing the email, the marketing, the pitch, the sales training, and then really putting a lot more time into the daily activities that build a proposal pipeline. In other words, more revenue at that proposed phase, and then really dive deep into trying to push that proposed revenue through to close by optimizing every step in the sales process and making sure that you're really following up on that business and understanding when you lose why you're losing. Is it price, or is it Packaging, there's a lot that goes into a sales process. And generally speaking, the way that you package it up and the way that you present it has a big impact on your likelihood to close, probably more so than just the price alone. The packaging and the way that you're presenting has a huge impact on your closing ratio here.
Hopefully that helps, Felicia. This is a question from Brady about the differences between Canada and the US. I'm assuming maybe he's thinking about buying or expanding from one to the other, but his question is, what major differences are worth noting, if any, between operating a design build landscape company in the US versus Canada from a finance and accounting perspective? So I think yeah, something about accounting
Yeah.
to do with those two countries. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's no difference, Brady. Canada follows GAAP. So, from an accounting perspective, there's absolutely no difference. Local tax, is different in every state, county, province, country. So, the tax amounts are different and what you charge tax on. But aside from that, there's really no difference. Very, very similar.
He says, "Thank you. Good to know. Thanks, Brady." Okay, so here's another one from Christy. This is a bit of a journey I'm going to take you on. This is another long question, but it's a fun one. There's an area behind our shop where the crew members and crew leaders get together to hang out at the end of the day, and they often get a few cases of beer and food. Where they hang out is actually only a few steps away from our shop dumpster. The owner and the operations manager jumped right to the solution. I guess someone left some trash out or something. I don't know if she missed that. The owner and the operations manager jumped right to the solution. Next time any trash is left out, everyone loses the privilege for a month or even indefinitely. Now, I'm not saying there shouldn't be consequences. I'm looking at the issue from the perspective the trash is left out isn't the problem. It's a symptom of an underlying problem. If you were the operations manager or the owner in this scenario, Mark, how would you address this? The results in this scenario is how can we inspire them to change this behavior without taking the privilege from every person? And what consequences would you suggest? And when would those consequences be enforced?
Yeah, I mean, anybody who's kind of spent a lot of time around me would know I am a hard ass with stuff like this. It's just respect at the end of the day. And so I wouldn't, the last thing I would do is say, hey, I'm going to take away your privileges. Like, we're way beyond that once we enter our working careers. I just don't believe that that works. In fact, I think it kind of, just puts distance between everybody. So I would be more inclined to go out and actually sit down, hang out with them, have a beer or two, maybe even buy pizza or whatever, and have a conversation about that specifically and just say, hey, I think it's really cool that you guys are all out here doing this. Clearly, there's a lot of important connection that comes from this, and we're all about that. But why are you guys leaving your garbage? Just come right out and ask. And I think most people would be a little bit embarrassed of the fact that they're leaving the garbage, or at least anybody that you want on your team would be embarrassed about it and just say, hey, listen, we love that you do this, but we expect you to have the respect for us just to make sure that you keep it clean around here. And that holds true everywhere in the business. Honestly, I find it really hard to believe that it's happening there and not happening in your job site trailers and in your shop and in your yard. If they're leaving garbage around in one place, they're probably doing it everywhere, which means you probably do need some 5S training. The 5S system is a fantastic way to change this and really help people understand the importance of workplace organization. It is a respect thing at the end of the day. We're just trying to respect each other by putting things back where they belong, by keeping work areas tidy, by making sure that everything does have a place so that everybody can learn and grow and hit their full potential together. And obviously, if we leave little messes here and there and everywhere, those turn into big messes. I think maybe the funniest movie about that is that movie Idiocracy. It's nothing short of hilarious. But when you actually let your garbage accumulate long enough, you live in a mountain of waste. And I think just being honest about it and talking about it outright and maybe being a little candid in the moment. It could be a little uncomfortable for a few minutes, but at the end of the day, I think the problem will go away. And, I'll say this, if it doesn't go away and you've got some senior people there, whoever the most senior people are that are sitting around the picnic tables having beers after work, it's their responsibility. So I'm going to hold them accountable. And ultimately, after I sit down and have the conversation with everybody over a couple of beers, I'll take them aside and say, hey, listen, this is for you to own from now on because you're the most senior person hanging out here. And so I'm going to leave it with you to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And I'm going to ask them for a commitment. And I do this regularly when I'm working with field staff. Hey, listen, here's the way it is right now. Here's the way I want it to be moving forward. Can I get you to commit to taking care of that for me from this point forward? And I get them to acknowledge it. And once I've got that type of communication, then if the problem persists, I've got one person to go back to. And anytime you sort of speak to a group or about a group the way you did with your question, that indicates that there's a very low level of accountability. If I say they or them or the field people or everyone around here, then that's indicating that there's a low level of accountability. I should have a name that comes to mind when things like this are happening, and it should be the most senior person involved. And I have to find a way to hold them accountable by just having really direct conversations. And if this is a symptom, as Benji pointed out, of a bigger problem, by the way. It's not this is not the problem. The problem is accountability is lacking.
We have a short one from Robert, same Robert who was asking about the pool pricing question, and but I like this one because I think a lot of people think about this and are forced to make decisions like this one. So Robert is saying for a $5 million a year design build company, does it make sense to have our sales manager also be in charge of marketing?
Yes, it does, but don't think for a minute that you've got a marketer. Being in charge of it is very different than being the marketer. And so, yes, I do think that that person should ultimately be responsible for it. But if they have not written a marketing strategy ever before, then I don't expect them to do it now because they'll write one and it won't be that good. So, what I'd probably do is I would seek mentorship. I'd hire an agency to help create the strategy. I'm going to lead by giving them our mission and our vision and our business goals for the year. And again, this should be the president or owner's role at a $5 million size. But I'm going to bring my sales leader alongside and say, hey, listen, this leader here is responsible to execute on our or our revenue goals here in the company. And I want to make sure that we create a great strategy. We don't know how to create that strategy because we're not marketers, we're landscapers. So I want to pair up my agency and my leader to make sure that they create the strategy together, align on the strategy, bring it to me as the owner president to review and approve. And then they go execute on that strategy simultaneously. The marketing agency should be running execution on any tactical things that are outside of our internal capabilities. And then our leader is very aware of what's happening on marketing, very aware of the metrics, very aware of all of the strategies and tactical efforts, and they can align their team to what's happening. But definitely, you don't at that size, you don't have enough budget to go hire a marketing manager or director. So you're better to use an agency as a shared resource.
Let me tack something on there, Mark, because I think we stumbled into an interesting learning opportunity here, which is you make a really good point. You maybe not resourced well enough to have both a dedicated sort of a senior marketing leader and a senior sales leader. And so they need to wear two hats. agency can be a good route, hire out the strategy. I get all that, but you and we've talked about this before. There's a lot of jokers in the marketing strategist category. So do you
Absolutely.
maybe want to shed some light on how to avoid those and get working with a true professional, the right agency, the right fit, who can understand the nuance they need to about your business to actually write and support good strategy and then the good work that comes off of it?
Yeah, but Benji's hitting on a really big point. I'm over the years, I think I would say I've learned this the hard way. I've literally wasted millions hiring agencies that make big promises but don't really have much accountability at the end of the day. So, like any strategy, when we write the strategy, we should be able to write supporting goals. We should be able to write supporting metrics and targets on a monthly, quarterly, and annual basis. And so, if we're going to hire an agency, we should be able to get that from them within the first 30 days before deciding to carry on with the work. And so the way that you make decisions when it comes to hiring an agency really does dictate the outcome. And I really believe that we should be able to align within 30 days on the strategy, the goals, the metrics, and the targets that we're going to work on together. And if we can't get there within 30 days, then we shouldn't proceed with the contract. So, what I'd highly recommend is start with a 30, 60, 90-day plan with a marketing agency. Make sure that it's clear. And after 30 days, you should be able to exit the contract if you can't align on strategy, goals, metrics, and targets. And then again at 60 days and again at 90 days, there should be an exit if you're not seeing any movement. And realistically, it's going to take 90 days to fully ramp the marketing company. So we don't want to fire them after 30 days because we don't have $1 million in leads, because we're not there yet. But after 90 days, we should be starting to see some really good activity and some really good movement in the metrics. And if we haven't got anything by 90 days, you're probably never going to get anything. And so I think it's really important that that 30, 60, 90-day plan is well written, that there's really clear milestones that you're expecting to reach, and that you get there on time or you move on entirely. And oftentimes, marketing agencies are trying to get a 12-month contract, and many of them are not that concerned with renewing those contracts, much the same as landscapers. There's lots of people out there that are better at selling than performing, and we have to protect ourselves from that. Now, this is why we have the advisory program. We've vetted some excellent marketing agencies that we know, like, and trust, that we can recommend and connect you up with if you're in the community. So feel free to reach out to your guide, and we'll help make those introductions to advisors. And your guide also will take a close look at the strategy that they come up with and help out with those 30, 60, 90-day meetings so that you actually onboard the agency really well and you start to see the value that you're expecting within a month, and that value just continues to build over the course of the first year. But that's a key component of our advisor services that we can certainly help with. Just reach out to your guide, and we can take it from there.
This is a fun one to end on from Mohammed. He's asking for some feedback on, I think, a branding decision he's making. Quick question. We're building a sod installation company. We're calling it Sod Father. Idea of this brand is to focus on sod installation only, with the idea to franchise the brand into different parts of Ontario. What are your thoughts on the name, and do you have any advice for what steps to take?
Yeah, it's a catchy name. I think certainly memorable, and very, very specific to what you're doing, which if you're going to really niche down the way you are, I think putting a name together like that makes a great deal of sense. A mistake I made in my career, my first name of my landscape business was The Beach Gardener. I started in a neighborhood called The Beach. And at the time, it made a lot of sense because, I fired up and I was running a $3, $4, $5 million business in one little neighborhood in Toronto. And it was great, but, naturally the referrals started to take me into other neighborhoods. and better neighborhoods where they were like, well, you're in the beach, and the name didn't resonate any longer. So I always say, make sure you think about the 5 year, 10 year, 20-year plan when you're naming the business. But it sounds like you're very specific about sod installation, and I think Sod Father is got a little humor, and it also has a little bit of recognition to it on its own. And I guess the way that you come up with that logo could ultimately enhance that a little further. But I don't think there's anything wrong with that name at all if your long-term vision is going to stay very specific to that niche market. Yeah, definitely a good. Tony just pointed out that you should buy that domain before somebody else says. So get on GoDaddy right away.
We will bring this in for a landing right there, guys. It is the top of the hour. For you Accelerator members, weekly sprint tomorrow, and then we will be back with Q&A again next week, same time, same day. If you have anything in the meantime, the community is an awesome resource for that, and I or we will get you an answer to whatever you post there as quickly as humanly possible. So again, I want to thank you guys for the great questions. They're really thoughtful and well written. Almost no typos today. That's a big deal for me when I'm reading these things. I really appreciate the clean, structured paragraphs that make it really easy for me to get these over to Mark. So thank you guys. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.